Cowley County is a place I hold very dear to my heart. It's where I was born and raised, like I said, and I went to the schools here, and I know everybody here, and my friends are here, and it's where I live. I certainly want my daughter to explore and go out and try new things, but I did the same thing, and I kind of felt that what really fit me was more of a relaxed lifestyle, and I don't like hustle and bustle, you know, so I go visit big cities and stuff, and that's a lot of fun, but it's nowhere I could be. I have to live somewhere in the open space. Spring Hill Farm's always kind of been a place, and so now it's our job to be stewards of the land and preserve the place for the future. And we're trying to add to that, obviously, with the winery and create more experiences that people can have in the county. But I think a lived-in place is more of a home, and that's what Cowley County is to me.
Now, let me back up a little bit. Beginning in 1885, we had an old soldiers reunion here, Civil War veterans, and they would come in every fall and march down Summit Street and then down Madison Avenue to what was known as Riverside Park. And these old soldiers came and stayed a week and had a grand time with speakers every night and the city band down there every night and hokey pokey ice cream and pink lemonade, merry-go-rounds. It was something for the families, you know. It was a great time. But often in September there were big rains, and then the townspeople would have to go out and pull their wagons out of the mud. So those ended, I would assume, around, I don't know, the teens or so. And then in 1928, just before the Big Depression, there were 3 men having lunch one day in the Petroleum Club, which was in the top of H&R Block. Now, that's the Colorado building. And there was a restaurant up there. The men were having lunch up there and talking as men would do right now. What can we do to boost the economy? You know, it's always a problem. And one of them said, how about a fall celebration? I have an idea that those 3 men had grown up in Ark City during the time of the other celebration that always ended up with rain and mud, and they maybe had to help their dads pull somebody out. So one of them said, why don't we do something at Halloween? Well, that sounded like a good idea. So Dusty Rhodes, the Chamber of Commerce secretary, was across the room, and they called Dusty over and said, what would you like? How would you feel about a fall celebration? Oh, Dusty's ready for anything. Sure, we'll form a committee. They had 90 committees, but the first one was to get a name for the celebration. And Mrs. J.W. Moore wrote on a scrap of paper, Ark for Ark City, and Alala, the Indian word to have a good time. And she thought it wasn't good enough and threw it in the trash. Her husband thought it was good enough, retrieved it, turned it in, and she had the distinction of winning our contest to name our celebration.
But there's a lot of open spaces, people choosing to live 2 miles apart, living away with long driveways because they can. There's a politeness. They won't tell you everything they think. You know that they're talking about it at home. But there's no point. It's like they don't have to really face each other every day and like you would in the city or like you would in a community where you're up against the ocean or things like that. So we kind of live up against the sky here.
And ironically, as rooted as she was in Winfield and Cowley County, a lot of this spirit of living a good social life actually came from her experience in Mexico, where she went first in 1930 and then went repeatedly. This village scene shows one of the things she loved so much about Mexico, which was the communal life. She wrote continuously about people living life in Mexico out in the public arena, on the street, conducting life outside and engaging with other people, and she loved that.
Well, I feel that her sense of travel, her sense of wanting to experience the vibrance of the world, was yet another lesson she would teach to others, and that when you travel, when you see other places, you can return with lessons of that energy, lessons of that difference, and make your home base all the stronger for it.
Right.
It's an ongoing challenge of working in 2 dimensions and trying to capture the 3-dimensional world. You create a lie. And so much of the history of modern art is to think about the that relationship and make
The push and pull.
painting more like seeing, more like knowing. And sometimes I think that result can be tricky for a viewer, but if it's about often that relationship, the world made flat.
Right.
But then another dimension that I think often Sujin was trying to get at, and I think we see in here too, is the energy of the landscape.
Yes.
I think that's one of the things that attracted her to the Cowley County landscape, was the sense of energy from the varied topography and color. And that's, I think, one of the reasons she took this topographical approach here, is that because it pulsates.
Well, it's clearly so changeable. You think about the path of the river, and you think about Island Park. It's
Yes.
kind of an inlet, or a kind of an oxbow, and a recognition that this is a changeable landscape, and there are many ways to see and understand that energy of the river flowing.
Oh wow, look at that wall.
Such a
What's
portrait of
going
such a portrait of Sujin, isn't it?
It's a time capsule.
I really wanted you to see this room because I think this is the truest portrait of her in the house. It's the most unchanged of the rooms. You see the quotations from favorite authors and thinkers, Gandhi and John F. Kennedy and Emerson and Thoreau, and you see her work in printmaking. She did so many block prints. I think she just loved the physicality of carving into the block, but also the sharing nature of prints, something you give away, whereas you don't tend to give away so many paintings. And then 3 illustrations of her mentor right in the middle of everything, of Sanzane. Late in life, she was still clearly nurturing the lessons that she absorbed from him.
I feel like if this was my studio space, I would be accused of being messy or cluttered. But to me, but I would want to have this many visual cues, this many reminders of references, places, people. It's you stockpile them and then can use them for your own creative ambitions.
Well, and I think one of the things that's so telling about her that you're suggesting in this room is that it's not just her painting that's in here. A lot of her students' work, students who particularly touched her, who weren't valuable, never went on to great fame, but had a connection with her. She retained their work in this studio sometimes for as many as 30 years.
And then she would in turn give things to her students.
Correct.
It wasn't just, this is mine now, this is mine.
No, real reciprocity.
Yes.
Right behind us is a dried sunflower. I mean, this wasn't just a formal exercise. This was the beauty of the land around her. Even in its gnarled form, it was an object to be kept.
Sometimes that's almost more beautiful than the living object, is the kind of remnant of what it was.
But I think only if you look at life, as Kate said, able to see the beauty in the mess.
Right.
A room like this, you know that every single object in here has or had a story.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so that's why it's such a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to see it and get to know a few of those stories. We don't always have that kind of an opportunity to get an inside view.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel that artists are most successful when they tap into their own environment, their own experiences in the environment. I know, for example, my grandmother, the paintings that have really continued to resonate with the family and really even in the community she lived are those things that she painted of local scenes, either the farm where they lived or of the local hills. She would occasionally do these kind of mountainscapes out of her imagination. And while they're kind of pretty to look at, they just don't have the real soul that the paintings that were most important to her would have. And so generally I try to encourage artists to really paint what they're familiar with, what they're comfortable with.
Well, I can talk for quite a while about cattle, which I knew nothing about. And I also had to learn what color implements the companies, different companies. John Deere's green, International Harvester's red, there's several others is orange. And I had to learn what Milo was, and wheat. And as far as the land is concerned, as far as I believe Cowley County is gorgeous. Well, it was Leonard's life. He was a born farmer. And
he had cattle and alfalfa and wheat, and he tried raising cotton one year. He and my son Joel were out hoeing by hand a cotton field one day when we thought that he'd lost his mind. It was that he didn't do that after that one year, I don't think.
He did not raise cotton again. Now, I was gone from Cowley County for 5 months once when Leonard was in the Army, but the rest of the time I've been right here.
It's over 82 years.
Right.
I was born in Independence, and by the time I was 2, Mom and Dad had moved between Omaha and Ponca City. They were in one or the other twice. I've slept since then. I forgot which one we were in twice, and then ended up in Winfield by the time I was 2. And so I grew up in Winfield. I had all my formal education except for my senior year in Winfield. And then Dad worked for Santa Fe Trails. That was the Santa Fe truck line. And they closed the Winfield depot and moved all the operation down here, so Dad got transferred down here when I was a junior in high school, about halfway through the year. So I got to finish out my junior year in Winfield, then I had to come down here and spend my senior year with the enemy. There was a monster rivalry between Ark City and Winfield, and it was a unique time. You know, you come down here, didn't know anybody, but I made friends, and I spent, with the exception of a little bit of time going to trade school and this kind of thing, and a couple of years working out of town, I have lived ever since in Ark City. So we moved down here in '65, and I've been here ever since.
Family and being able to raise my kids here is very important to me. Arkalala, being able to experience the things that I was able to experience when I was growing up, that's really important to me.
Just learning different things from teachers and what they've done from living here when they were little. My dad's experiences, my grandma and grandpa. My grandma goes on and on about stories of hanging garments in the trees. If you don't clean your room, your garments go in the trees. Bras, panties, anything. She threatened me with it, so it kind of freaked me out.
I think the inspiration that comes from this land is, the storms, I think. Like, when it storms, it's very pretty, and not only that, but Kansas is a very peaceful state because of the land and how flat it is. But when it storms, it really shows out its violent colors and its true colors. So I think the way I feel about the land, basically, you might think that it's, you know, genuine and true, and that it's not going to hurt you, and then, you know, you have that storm that comes and you really see its true colors, and that kind of defines really everybody.